Tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Our guest today is Dr. Valerie Rein, the author of the book Patriarchy, Stress Disorder, The Invisible Inner Barrier to Women's Happiness and Fulfillment. Dr. Valerie has been using her background as a psychologist to explore all the ways we can begin to heal from the stress and trauma caused to us living in a patriarchal society, which is right up our alley. Thank you so much for being here today.
I am so happy to sit down with you, Natalie, and to dive in.
Why don't you go ahead and just give the tolerator, since you're one of our new guests, a little bit of background of how one becomes a studier of patriarchy stress disorder. Did you coin that term?
I did.
Did you? There was a friend DM'd me today and coined the term capitalistic Christendom or something along those lines. And I was like, I go get that term on the internet. So I love when we come up with terms that explain the hell that we're currently going through. But go ahead and give them your background.
Yeah, thank you. I think it helps to name things, all right, whatever the term is, but it makes something intangible tangible. And one of my favorite feedback that I've gotten from women reading the book, primarily women, although it is for people across the gender spectrum. But I've been having more resonance with my audience, of which I'm a member myself. And so my favorite feedback has been, thank you for naming something I've known my entire life, I've felt my entire life, and now I have words for it. It is no longer invisible. That is actually I start my book with this quote by Anonymous. I couldn't track the source of the quote. When we can see the invisible, we can do the impossible. And that has been a big mission behind really having this conversation far and wide about how the imprints of living under patriarchy for millennia have been impacting us as a society and each individual in that society, and depending where we land, both on the gender spectrum and other factors and intersecting layers of our identity and how it fits and meets with patriarchal approval or does not, and what parts of us we've been compelled to cut off because they didn't fit, they were not safe, and that has been going on for generations and collectively. So that's kind of how it all comes together. I lost the beginning of that sentence a long time ago, so
no, we're at the very end of 2025, and I feel like every day I voice memo a dear friend to feel like I don't understand how today is a day that I have to live through, and so much is going on all at once that has nothing to do with anything I would have power over. But yeah, so I just have thoughts that dangle out of my mouth, and then I go, I don't know, it's gone. And I think that's part of the stress of it all.
That is part. It's definitely part of how it impacts us. Back to your question. My journey began when I was aware of myself just as a being, as a little human, a little girl in this society. And I was getting all these messages early on that I needed to fix myself somehow. That was something wrong with me. And I was a pretty compliant child. I did my best to kind of keep up and, fix it. But I couldn't quite figure out what it was that was wrong with me. Apparently, like a lot of things. But really, as I was growing up, I became a seeker and read tons of books, philosophy, personal development, and studied psychology because what else would I study to explain once and for all what was wrong with me? And so, 2 graduate degrees later, I was no closer to an answer because I had many, many answers, like as many as would fit into the DSM diagnostic manual of all possible mental health, quote unquote, disorders. But somehow that was not satisfying. That was like none of that, although I followed a lot of rabbit holes, none of that actually was tangibly improving how I was feeling. And lots of therapy, both on the receiving end, and then later I became a therapist. And then finally, somehow, the dots connected for me. And I was 40 years old. And who knows? Maybe it is does this grace had something to do with hormones shifting and being in perimenopause, and as estrogen levels were going down, so was some clarity was coming in, and so the veil thinned out, and I was able to recognize, oh my gosh, what if this trauma I have been trying to figure out my entire life that had been holding me back is not something personal? What if it is collective? What it is, if it is intergenerational? Because we now know from epigenetics that traumatic experiences are transmitted epigenetically generation to generation, and women have been receiving these traumas on a daily basis by just existing on the patriarchy. And some of them have been, 1,000 paper cuts, and some of them have been really like capital T traumas. And all of that we've inherited, and all of that has been in the collective field with us. So I am so grateful for this download that came through, that awareness came through, that then expressed as a book, and being able to have these conversations with women. Because it changed everything for me, from just trying to fix myself, incessantly going to therapy, digging into self-help, to recognizing, wait a minute, what if there's not something wrong with me, but there are the conditions that have been hostile, and the adaptations that my system created and inherited from so many generations. These adaptations, they are now holding me back, preventing me from fully shining my light in the world, preventing me from fully being happy, feeling relaxed, fulfilled, all my colors being online. Yeah. So that's been the exploration of late.
What a great and yet also terrifying way to get to know yourself, to be like, I actually think that millennia of men creating patriarchal systems that truly only benefit them has turned me into the person who has these feelings about myself, or discourages myself, or has these like inherent fears. A very light-hearted way that this manifests for me is, I was reading a book last night, a fiction book, and I got to the big twist, and I picked up my phone to text a friend who had recommended the book, to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. And I looked at the clock and it was midnight. And I was like, oh, you can't be texting friends at midnight. Other people sleep. And when I told her, she was like, you could have texted me. I have my notifications turned off. And I was like, that's good to know, because I don't sleep. I thrive very, very late at night. And she was like, why? I love sleep. I go, I love sleep too, but my body enjoys a midday sleep. But I go, when I was growing up, I was a little girl who saw her mother and her aunts and her grandmother finally obtain peace when it was dark and everyone else was in bed, including the entire world. So my body feels the most at peace. And I call it, like, some people call it the witching hour. Some people, like, I go, no, the nighttime is for women. It's for us.
Oh, chills. Natalie, I actually never thought about it this way, but I too feel peace in those hours. And I love sleep too. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's, have to, weigh it. And also connecting this to symptoms that so many women experience, particularly in midlife, but it can come up at any age, that it's challenging. Getting to sleep is challenging. Staying asleep is challenging. So I haven't actually considered this through this lens of, oh wow, like we've inherited that sense that we can actually be at peace when everybody else goes to sleep. We're finally left alone. We can practice our witchcraft, and nobody's there to stop us. It's fascinating. And of course, another aspect is that so much stress in our bodies that is our baseline. It's not like a black and white answer to everyone. Everybody's situation is different, but these are fun stones to upturn.
Yeah. I wish if I had it my way, I wish I was at a place where I felt safer walking at night because I think I would enjoy it more. There's less cars to deal with, there's less of a chance to have to give your emotional and mental energy over to a neighbor or a kid that's playing out in their yard or anything. Because when I'm walking, I'm truly usually trying to solve the world's problems in my 45-minute walk and clear my head so I can sit down to write for the rest of my day or plan for the podcast or anything. And it's amazing how one of the first things I'll think about when it comes to like getting up and getting ready to go on my walk is, oh, I really just hope I don't run into anybody. Like, can I just sneak out? And hopefully everyone else is locked up so I can just enjoy this for 30 minutes.
I love how beneficial your walks are to the world. You are contemplating big
Yeah,
questions.
I'm just sitting there stressing myself out to be like, how do I make people understand that the Denver season of Love is Blind was in fact patriarchy propaganda, and that's why by the finale you hated all of the women because they were all demonized for having hopes and dreams and personalities, and Love is Blind and Netflix convinced you that that was bad. And you hook, line, and sinkered it because they weaponized therapy language against us. Like,
Oh shit. It runs deep. And it's everywhere, right, Natalie? Once you begin to see it, you really can't unsee it. And you just see it and you want to share with people. Let's see it together and
and I think too, I personally need a community that is because I was just editing an episode with another friend who advocates for reproductive health care in her state, Wyoming, during election season and all year round. And when I was telling her all of the things that I wish people understood, she kept reiterating, well, you're on step 20, and I'm working with people who are still at step 1. And and it's lonely being at step 20 because when you're at step 20, you're looking around at 2025 going, I don't understand how everyone in my social life doesn't understand that we didn't just wake up one day and we were living in a country ran by a fascist. We are literally millennia of decisions heading towards this. And there's always been a root to that problem. And it's always been patriarchy and colonialism. And I don't understand how in 2025 we're not ready for those conversations because we're seeing the ramifications of that all the time, most recently with the SNAP benefits going away on November 1st. And it takes a lot of patience to remember, well, some people are still grappling with the fact that, they're in a marriage that is very patriarchy heavy, or they're post divorce in the middle of a glow up and they're just trying to like enjoy that, or they're worried about their freaking SNAP benefits. And I'm over here just being like, can someone please just affirm me that we didn't just wake up and this was all happening. Like, it was a very well rolled out plan by men who benefit from misogyny and patriarchy.
Yeah, and the women who bought into it, because also it's bringing this compassionate view, right, of how whether or not one is bought into it, participating in it, even creating it, one is still harmed by it, just in different ways. So women who are bought into the patriarchal agenda, um, and there's a spectrum, right? A wide spectrum. It may be subtle, which I think would probably all need at some level of subtle, myself included, because there are some layers of my subconscious that is still bought into that I haven't yet gotten to, right? And then they come up in my thoughts and my emotions and my behaviors and choices, and they surprise me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was there, and I'm the mother of patriarchy. It's just this sort of, and I didn't see it. And then, of course, there are more overt that we can like recognize, like, oh my gosh, these women are really like soldiering patriarchy, like promoting that agenda with like everything that they say, everything that they do, right? But why? The question is why. And in my view, it all comes down to a very human feature that we're all, or even animal feature, if you will. We're all seeking safety.
Yeah.
All beings want to be safe, and we want to belong. And it's as simple as that. It's just for some, safety is in aligning with patriarchal power, and that's how they think about it. That's what makes sense to them right now. And there's belonging, and there are benefits in that, and there is harm that they also receive, right? So it's very complicated. As a matter of fact, when I look at patriarchy and when I think about it, I also don't think about it as something that is exclusive to men. It's men's creation, and men's, men are the ones who are perpetrating it and perpetuating it. I feel we're all implicated in that in different ways, right? Obviously, for some, it may be like a full time job, and for others, more of a hobby. Very, very part time. But it still stands. So it stands on many, many anchors. So there are many parts to that foundation. And for men, the cost of belonging in that club patriarchy is really high, because men have to, according to patriarchy, really cut off and fragment their humanity.
Yeah.
And the only emotions that men are allowed to have, and correct me if, or like, please offer your take on that, because I don't claim any authority on the final word on any of that. But in my experience, it's anger. It's the emotion that is allowed to men primarily, being competitive, being strong, all these things. But being nurturing, being soft, being, feeling other feelings, sadness, and even joy, and etc., that is prohibited. And so men also struggle. The men's mental health is going through a huge crisis right now as well. Um, and part of it is that small man box that people are locked in, and patriarchy says that you can only be accepted, and you can only have those benefits from club patriarchy when you're in it.
Yeah.
Right. And for women and people across the gender spectrum, everybody has, well, patriarchy only recognizes the binary, right? So there's not a place for the spectrum. So for women, there's a different box, and again, if we don't fit, then there are consequences, right, in belonging and in safety. So all of that, it lives in our subconscious, in our collective subconscious, in our individual subconscious. And even if we don't believe that crap, it's really the punchline for us more, folks who are more like, or think about ourselves as more maybe awake and aware and doing the work, right? We're doing the work to be more awake and aware and all that. That shit still lives in our subconscious, which is maddening. But that's part of how PSD, patriarchy stress disorder, operates, right? Consciously, we don't believe it. Subconsciously, the wiring that tells us where we're safe, where we're unsafe, is still pretty there.
While you were talking, I was thinking about teenage Natalie or early 20s Natalie and how different she was from the woman who ended up with a podcast about everyday misogyny and is trying her hand at screenwriting so more women's stories get told. And I, sitting now as a 36-year-old woman who has done all of the decentering work that I have done, I have rewritten parts of my past where I'm like, yeah, my two grandmas, they were single and they made it work. And that was empowering and that was celebrated and this, that, and the other. And now that I'm actually thinking about it, I'm like, no, you grew up knowing that your grandmothers, through death and other reasons, were women who raised their families on their own. But you also were told at every turn that that life was a life of struggle. And it led you to be a girl who was constantly worried that no one was going to pick her so she wouldn't have to struggle.
Chills.
Yeah. Whereas my grandmothers were strong for everything that they had to endure. And I do, when I honor my ancestors and my spiritual practices and all of that, I always call on that kind of strength. But to be 16 years old and losing your grandmother and hearing about all of the things that she went through to be your grandmother, it does imprint in your mind that it's like, well, if you don't buy into a marriage or if a man doesn't pick you to make you safe or whatever, then it's a life of struggle and no one wants to have a life of struggle.
Yeah. This is such soul-brain realization, and I celebrate your courage. It takes a lot of courage to get to clarity.
Thank you. I am so grateful to have a new way to talk about this phenomenon in my brain and my heart and my soul and my communities of patriarchy stress disorder, because again, I do think naming it actually gives it a power. And luckily you have named it like it is a medical mental condition, and it very much is. Who knows what my brain would have been able to accomplish had I been allowed to believe in myself or enjoy my body or not have to rely on the work and the kindness of men when men aren't very often conditioned to be kind or empathetic or things like that.
Yeah, and that's just it. Um, it's so eye-opening to consider, as far as our imagination can take it, and mine is not all that. Mine doesn't have a lot of mileage in that regard. When I try to imagine not only what my life could have been like, well, I can tell you that I would not have had some traumatic experiences that I had, unwanted sexual experiences, other traumatic experiences, had I not been conditioned through PSD to to think of myself, to have the feelings, to make the choices that I was making, how I was relating to myself, my worth, my body. I was very different, so I know that those experiences would have been very, very different. But also, what's even more important right now is like, what can our life be like now? That's why how good can it get is the battle cry of this movement of healing PSD, and talk about it in the book. I know it resonates with a lot of readers. How good can it get? And that's a constant process of discovery, because this territory of how good can it get lies outside of the patriarchally approved perimeter of where we are allowed to exist and be safe and be sort of approved of, sort of, yeah, conditionally, sometimes yes, sometimes not so much, but we keep trying, right? Earning that conditional approval by, working a lot and, just checking off the boxes. What will make me more approved of, which also translates to safety, which also translates to belonging, right? So all of this is wired so deeply into our very survival. And that's why just changing how we think about things, yes, it is an important step, but it doesn't untie those knots. It doesn't create that liberation, as we need to create that deep embodied safety, working through those experiences. And then the imagination too goes, oh, maybe this may be possible for me. And then I'll take this risk, the risk of maybe not belonging or being rejected, and I will actually follow my dream, and I will reach out and I'll make that contact, and I will put myself out there, and I will have this experience, right? And all of that, it's like we have, PSD creates a certain limit on our capacity. It puts the ceiling of our capacity pretty low. And here is a paradox. On the one hand, women are tremendously resilient, very, very strong. And on the other hand, the capacity is very limited to put ourselves out there and take risks. So I've been actually sitting with this paradox. And I love that you use the word tolerate in the title of your show, because that's exactly the word I've been pondering the last few days. It's like there are at least two different kinds of tolerating that I'm in touch with. On the one hand, like all the things we've tolerated, right, that we don't no longer wish to tolerate. And that's a big wake up moment. Oh, I've been tolerating this. I don't want to tolerate it anymore. And so we get on this journey. And then there's a different kind of tolerance that is being able to actually tolerate our own emotions and the intensity of our own experience when we're reaching towards something we want. We desire, we feel that authentic pull towards something, and it's just intense, right? And that tolerance, PSD really cramples that, really, what's the word I'm looking for? It inhibits, just really squashes it. And part of the work of healing is creating more capacity to tolerate our own expansion. See, same word, completely different things. Right?
Yes. Well, and a lot of it is doubt and fear. A lot of the things that I had to tolerate when I made a career change from teaching to storytelling, being a professional storyteller, is I was told by adult authority figures that, like, don't you know that's hard? Like, it's hard making movies, and it's hard being a writer, and you'll be broke, and there are no safety nets or anything. And then my liberal ass agenda goes, well, do you think that maybe we should live in a society where if I want to tell children's stories for the rest of my life, I should also be able to eat, because children need stories in order to have functioning brains. But we don't value things like that. Yeah. And I think when confronted with the idea of it's going to be so hard, part of my experience with decentering men and patriarchy and seeing a life outside of that was a queer awakening within myself to be like, I've always been attracted to women spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and probably physically. Who would even like, whenever someone asks me who's the most beautiful person in the world is, I always say Natalie Dormer. It never occurs to me to say Pedro Pascal.
Mhm.
But it's but when I was growing up, part of my patriarchal conditioning was knowing that a queer life was a life of struggle again. You're going to be
Mhm.
ostracized. You
Yeah.
won't have a community. Unfortunately, we've made red pill communities and content so alluring and seductive to young boys, but no one wants to talk about that.
Even in my system, it is a little too disturbing to like really look at that because you're absolutely right. It has been made so alluring. There is so much belonging and so much safety and so much propping up of the ego in these radicalized communities. So that we have a lot of young men who are gravitating um, toward that. Because again, like we all have those basic human needs. We want to belong, we want to be safe, and our egos also want to be propped up. Like I matter, and my identity, like it matters, right? Others recognize me for something, and those needs, unfortunately, like there are agendas that really exploit those basic human needs, and it just goes way too far. It goes, it, yeah, it's just, yeah, it gets dark, and we've seen that throughout history so many times. And you would think we would learn a thing or two and stop taking the bait, and recognize where there's authentic connection and belonging, and where it is just being weaponized, essentially. Um, and it's sometimes it's not, um, yeah, it's not that easy, I guess, or not that straightforward. Sometimes a person is unprepared to recognize that.
Another term that I kind of keep in my tool belt along with tolerating is purposeful. So when someone wants to talk to me about the inherent struggles of single women or the inherent struggles of the queer community and these struggles that you sign up for, even when I was teaching, the base assumption was going to be that I would never make enough money to support myself because we don't pay teachers enough money to support themselves because they're doing an act of service to our communities and our, it's one step up from volunteer work in our culture's eyes. And I tell people, I'm like, you don't find that odd that just because you're born female or you're born queer or you end up not meeting the right guy that sweeps you along and treats you nice enough that you walk down an aisle that you were destined to a life of struggle. You think that just happens because it happens. It's still very much part of a purposeful system to keep us traumatized and in a state of fear. So we towed the line so that women do seek out marriages that will make them safe and make them feel like they have a little bit of power in their home. Or some women don't feel like they have any power in their home, but they at least know that they'll be fed and clothed. And we're in such a scarcity mindset that that's fine for right now. And when I go, no, it's not because I made a bunch of wrong choices that I ended up single and a broke podcaster. It's because there was a system put into place millennia ago when you started rampaging through areas of the world where communities were ran by women, both spiritually, physically, and community wise. And you took away their power and you eradicated all religions that were ever ran by women. And then those cultures died off. And now they're ancient cultures that I have a book about 800 pages long about how colonialism and colonization destroyed that. That was purposeful. Women were seen as a threat because of all of the things that we could accomplish spiritually and in our communities, and therefore we were eradicated. It's something called the Salem witch trials, actually, if we want to go a little bit more modern with that.
There's so much, yeah, purposeful, um, agenda driven, just layers and layers and layers of these constructs, systems, decisions, trends, etc., that our whole culture, they're just interwoven into our culture. Much of our culture is actually constructed of that. Um, and how to begin to see through that, like fish in water, right? When we begin to recognize, like, this is water, and it's it's the environment. This water happens to be toxic, and it has been polluted and has been making us ill for a very long time.
And we've said the word struggle about 100 times this episode, but another theme of your book and what you bring up is how we reframe struggle in our mind to understand how we've been made to associate guilt with our feelings and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves. So would you like to talk a little bit about guilt and reframing struggle from that lens?
Guilt is a signal, guilt and shame. So I use this metaphor in the book, likening PSD to an invisible in the prison. It is invisible, and how you can tell that it's there, whenever you approach the perimeter, it's like there's that invisible electric fence, and it gets activated. And one of those signals is shame or guilt, and not authentic guilt like, oh, I harmed you and I take accountability in our relationship, right? I feel guilty, and that's appropriate. That's an appropriate signal, because if I did something that caused harm, I need to repair it. But the guilt that comes with patriarchal conditioning is not that. It is in the category of where women can't win. For example, mom guilt. Right? Let's go for the obvious, and we've all experienced that. We've seen it in our mothers and grandmothers and so many women all around us. Yeah, it's and how women also relate to one another through the patriarchal lens of judging each other's choices. Like, is she choosing to have children? Is she choosing to not have children? And what that means. And okay, so she has children, but how is she raising them? This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. If she has children and she works, then she's abandoning her children. If she is a stay-at-home mom, then what is she doing in the world? She's not contributing to society. And that is, again, there's such a fabric of our own cultural, this web. And we're caught in this web, and we just feel the stress from all these signals of guilt and shame and can't win no matter what I do, right? And especially right now, we're living in a very particular time when anybody's judgment, anybody's thought about anyone can be instantly broadcast through social media, like through comments, etc. And like, oh my, so the activation of this invisible electric fence of guilt and shame is very, very strong. Again, it's there to keep us in check. And how do we begin to break out of that? That is the question I've been exploring for years now, and I'm happy to report with some success.
Well, because when I'm confronted with, the guilt and shame of being woman, and I have women in my life who are mothers, and again, and the job thing comes up where it's like, well, daycare again is not free in this country very often, so it's like, well, I need childcare. Childcare is over half of my take home pay every month, but then also I need to be, and a friend put it very bluntly for me where it's like, well, yeah, but when I took those 5 years off because I couldn't afford daycare and working, it also means that I took off 5 years of my 401k. And then so there's a financial stability for your future self with that too. And you're juggling all of this. And then, single flip it me comes in and I go, oh, just close your eyes and like ground yourself in what would make the most sense to you. Not even what makes you the happiest, but like what brings you the most calm when you think of this is the decision to make. And it's a foreign concept to people to just make the choice that would make you feel the best in the day to day. And it's like, well, I'm not supposed to feel the best in my day to day. I'm supposed to agonize over this choice.
Yeah, that is also wired so deeply in us that what we perceive as normal is some kind of a state of unease, stress, etc. Um, yeah. So when I began unwinding that in my system and encountering areas of ease, like, oh my gosh, I can relax into ease, I would start having episodes of panic. Like other parts of my system would go like, what's wrong? What's wrong? You can't relax because you have to be vigilant. You have to be on high alert, or you're not allowed. Patriarchy police is going to come after you. um, and even when we are in a place of relative stability and even success and things that like there's roof over our heads, and we have food and stability in our household, and everything is kind of taken care of, and yet we're not able to fully enjoy our lives. We're not able to fully be in a state of relaxation, deep connection, pleasure, and playfulness, and hear the voice of our own intuition and authentic guidance, know who we are, and show up as who we are. And that is still impacted. There is still a level of stress that goes, no, you gotta keep it all together. The other shoe may still drop. And that's exhausting. Carrying that is exhausting. And then we have all these health expressions like chronic fatigue, and our thyroids are impacted, and our sleep is impacted, and hormones are out of whack, etc., etc., etc. Is chronic stress a component in all of that? Absolutely. There are lots of studies that show the role of stress in pretty much across every aspect of our well-being, including our physical health. And is it a far leap? Is it far-fetched to suppose that there are aspects of the stress that are rooted in never feeling safe as a woman, right? For many, many generations, how much of our constant stress is rooted there, even when our lives are quote unquote good, like or good enough or safe enough, right? Where we don't have to be vigilant, and yet that vigilance is a survival mechanism that we inherited. And I So I have this very controversial belief based on my experience, based on working with so many women, that there are deep layers of safety that we don't even know what they feel like. We've never experienced them being in a female body in this lifetime. And it's kind of concerning, to say the least, that we don't.
It's been something that I've been really focused on in my current life circumstances where I'm like, I can't remember the last day that I felt mentally, emotionally, or physically safe all at the
Mhm.
same time. Where I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, where
Wow.
it's like, I'm doing great today. I'm fine. And without something peaking, even on good days, it could be a day and I've just been at the zoo all day with my nephew, and my zoo is the favorite place for me to be ever. And I'm, and at any moment, I could be like, okay, but it's getting dusk. We got to be careful in this parking lot. Like, threats be lingering all the time. Someone could snatch me, or I'm one something that people are trying to drive home to the people who don't believe in SNAP benefits and other forms of welfare are, well, you're about 3 paychecks closer from being on SNAP benefits than you are to being a billionaire, and how easy it is to find yourself. I was laid off during the COVID pandemic, and it was one day I was an employed happy person, and the next day I was laid off with an uncertain dystopian future
Yeah.
looming,
Yeah.
and grappling with that. And I'm like, when was the last time that I was like, I'm physically safe,
Mhm.
I'm mentally safe, and
Mhm.
and no one's going to come for me today?
Yeah, absolutely. There are all these realities, as you've been pointing out, not only that are baked into an experience of being a woman, um, and they are very, very real, they're very present, that create that feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Something may happen, something may go down, and I'm not too far away from being unsafe, even when I have this relative safety right now. And so our nervous system never stops running on high alert, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Because the more stressed we are, the more stressed we are, right? And the less safe we feel. And at some point, it also becomes, in a way, that all those self preservation strategies also become a limiter, because we are less likely to put ourselves out there to take risks that may advance us in pretty much every area of our authentic desires.
Literally, women have to carry that idea with them at all times, that even what feels like a right move could be a wrong move, and then you're unsafe immediately.
Yeah, it's back to that can't win concept. As a woman, you just can't win on the patriarchy. Sometimes I use this metaphor of the patriarchy casino, where we're all like at this gambling table. We have some chips, and they're conditional worth chips. Sometimes we'll win some. Okay, you did a good job babysitting. You get a couple of chips for that. Oh, but then you were focusing on yourself, so we take the chips back. The house always wins at the end of the day. The house always wins, but it is so addictive again, because we want to belong, we want to be approved of, we want to be loved, we want to be safe. And because we're not given in this society, we're not given unconditional love, we're not given unconditional worth. That's not how this society operates. Everything is conditional. We get stuck. We get stuck just gambling, right? And always losing, and always trying so hard, and it's just pain, not being able to quote unquote win, right? No matter what choices you make, you think you're making good choices, but then again something like catches up with you and makes you feel unsafe, and like you're wrong, making you wrong.
Yeah, it used to happen a lot in my career before COVID, when I was working in theater or as a teacher, where it's like I already live away from my family. No man has chosen me, so I don't have a support system. And just failure after failure of dating and whatnot. And I would make one choice at work, and everything would work out. And I'd be like, good job, Natalie, you did work today. And then someone would have to come in, and due to their own insecurity, for their own prejudice or bullshit or whatever would have to tell me, well, actually, you're a huge fuck up. And then the immediate wash over you of like, I'm a woman who lives on my own. My insurance is something that I have to carry. My paycheck is something that I need to feed myself and the cat that I adopted out of the street. And it's that constant, like, everything worked out. And yet at the end of the day, I was still on fire and no one was coming to put out the fire
Oh, it's ridiculous that we have to rebuild ourselves.
daily.
Right? Yeah, living in this toxic environment, we have to like do our own detox through all the means that we can figure out, through all the healing techniques and whatever we can get our hands on, and hopefully a good supportive community. And and kudos for leaning into that, leaning into your own self worth and doing that reality check of who you actually are and how it actually is. And it's not what the person is projecting onto you. There's just so much violence in our society that, again, stems from people feeling not enough in themselves. People feel not okay, not approved of. And because of that, all of these distortions arise that we have to compete with each other, or if I'm better than you, that it gives me more chips at the casino. Conditional worth, I can get some on, at your expense. And entire communities operate like that, right now it's like, oh, we are better than them, and like it is just it is just such a cool, painful mess. And to me, the healing begins with, like, we have to deconstruct conditional worth. We have to get to the root of this traumatic conditioning. I use this word worth less in my book, that women have been imprinted for many generations with this notion that we are worth less than men.
Yeah.
And it's so present and so powerful, um, and it is just encoded in the fabric of our society. We have to restore our full worthiness, not that we are better than somebody else. All these distortions only exist because there is this concept, that lived philosophy of conditional worth.
Yeah.
If there is no conditional worth, there is unconditional worthiness of everyone, and not only humans, right? All life, everything. Then it all falls apart. There is no system of oppression that can even exist,
Right.
because everyone is worthy and everyone belongs and everyone is loved. I know it sounds very utopian, like, oh, like, how do we get there? Yeah, and we may be ways away from the looks of it right now. But we can get to a place of feeling it within ourselves and creating this feeling for one another, supporting one another, and creating that feeling. I find that collective trauma requires collective healing, and that's a huge emphasis in our communities. We call them thrivers, people who work with us in this paradigm, where we can help each other by reflecting our unconditional worth to each other, and it also melts our projections, it melts our own internalized self-hate. We heal together. We
Yeah.
heal together, and then the small community of safety becomes a bigger community, right? Like the ripple effects go out into the world. We've seen this transformation happen with one person in the family unit, and then the family also transforms, and the organization transforms, and the people they're working with also feel this change. So that is my angle of optimism right now, because I am experiencing that. I'm seeing that as a possibility. And in the world that is such a mess right now, everything is so up right now. which in a way I feel the silver lining in that is that we're tolerating less, right? We're less tolerant of the shit we used to tolerate. All this is activated in us, all this conditioning, all this trauma is activated. That means we're no longer asleep to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're no longer just sleepwalking, and we can do something about healing it. We can activate that agency and that motivation. I know sometimes people feel very helpless right now because, right, like, what can I do? This is the world we live in. But I actually feel that there's a lot that we can do, starting with our own liberation. It's not in isolation. Like, my liberation and your liberation are interconnected, and we can help each other, right? Have that experience of safety, belonging, and unconditional love.
Well, I think that this is a great time to move us into our closing out portion of the episode where we offer the listeners a lesson. If you had to tell people what the first step of healing would be, or the first mindset change that you could make when it comes to patriarchy, stress disorder, what would be a lesson that you would like to leave the audience with?
The first step, it's going to be different for everyone, but let me start here because I think this one is universal. I'm going to describe a process that is available as a download on my website. Everybody can grab it. It's free. drvalerie.com under resources. And this process is connecting through the senses with the actual safety in the present moment. And the reason I want to introduce it as the first step is because you want to, on this journey, like, we want to connect with our authentic state, our inner guidance, our own thoughts, our own intuition. And when we're constantly feeling unsafe, this is just not available. There are other voices that are up in our minds, the inner critic, external voices. We're looking outside of ourselves to establish that safety or to orient. What should I do? What should I do? I don't know. What is my friend doing? What can I read online? What am I supposed to do in this situation? And I feel now, especially now when everything is kind of upside down and so chaotic and so messy, we need to hear our own authentic voice. And so this simple practice, I call it the repower tool. We're just going to take a moment and connect with this moment through the five senses. Look and really register what you are seeing. You may move your eyes around and really register what's around you. Looking left, looking right, looking up, looking down, looking behind you, over your right shoulder, or your left shoulder, and actually registering, slowing down enough so that your brain registers what you're seeing and registers that there's actually no threat that you can see. Now, we're going to listen for the sounds and the quiet in the environment. And this way, we're registering through our hearing. There's no threat that we can perceive. Now, how about the smell, the sense of smell? Everything checks out. The sense of taste. Yeah, pretty good. And finally, the sense of touch. You don't need to go in this particular sequence. And the sense of touch, you may touch something, another, like an object. You can place your hand on something and register the texture. And I also like to bring skin to skin contact to my own precious body. You may caress one hand with another, or touch any other areas of where you can access your skin and caress them. And what's really wonderful about this, there's an additional benefit of, I'm getting so relaxed, I'm losing my words. I'm kind of getting blissed out. The additional benefit of stimulating oxytocin production. And that creates that relaxation and a state of connection with yourself, with others. It improves your learning, etc., etc. Yeah, it's just a feel good hormone. You may not feel it right away the first time you're doing it, but the more you practice, the faster you get to that place because your system will learn like, okay, this is the drill and will allow you to get into a deeper state of relaxation. So don't give up if you do it once and like, I don't know, I didn't really feel much. Like, do it again, and it doesn't take a long time. You can do it like in under a minute.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love a grounding activity. It's so helpful. When I was in my high stress theater job where at any moment my brain or my heart could be attacked for doing a good job, I would come home every day and ground and meditate and just like take those first 10 minutes of my home to be like, hey, I'm home. I'm
Yeah.
safe. I'm going to turn
Mhm.
my phone on Do Not Disturb. He cannot and will not talk to me tonight.
Yeah.
um, and then we also like to end with a manifestation that we can add into the general
All
collective and
right.
energy. So, what
Let's
would
do
you
it.
like to manifest for us all?
Mm. Ah, let me drop in to that space of manifestation. I want to manifest a relief of suffering. I want to manifest a reality where all beings are free from suffering and any kind of bondage, where all beings are happy, healthy, and have the experience of abundance, lacking for nothing, being able to enjoy their relations and being able to contribute meaningfully in this lifetime and enjoy that and know who they authentically are, being awake to their true nature and the true nature of everyone.
That was gorgeous. This was a gorgeous conversation. I'm so glad that the internet, of all of the things that it does, brought us together and that we
Yay!
were able to find one another. Sometimes the algorithms work out. Dr. Valerie, please let everyone know where they can connect with you, and I will link it in the show notes so it's easy. But please plug all of your work and how to find it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Natalie. It has been such a delight connecting. And what a delicious conversation. drvalerie.com, drvalerie.com is where you can get your hands on the first chapter of my book, Patriarchy Stress Disorder. It's you can instantly download it in PDF and audio book format, which I love very much. I narrated it myself. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and you, yeah, and if it resonates, you can purchase the book there as well. And that way we are connected. You'll hear from me via email about our community healing opportunities that we have coming up. We're like having something for the community on a regular basis that is, it does not involve a monetary exchange in some place for people to come and experience the work beyond the information in the book, get on that journey of how good can it get with us. And we have paid programs as well that sponsor all the free stuff that we do. So if you're interested in finding out about those opportunities, you can email Valerie at drvalerie.com.
Well, thank you so much. And tolerators, thanks for sitting with us today. You know the drill. It's Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram, Natalie K124 if you're interested in my personal socials, and that's how you get to TikTok, YouTube to all the men I've tolerated before, Pinterest, Patreon. If it's a social media app, type in my name, see what happens. Go for a fun little scavenger hunt. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including carrying the weight of our mothers, our grandmothers, and all of the mothers and grandmothers who came before us. Smiles are for joy.